Let's talk about Brock Lesnar. I mean, the guy is a once-in-a-generation athlete, a physical specimen with so much raw power, it almost seems to defy explanation. But here's the thing, behind all that brute force, there's a blueprint. And today, we're gonna dissect the science of how this beast was actually built. So that brings us to the big question, right? How in the world do you forge this level of athletic dominance? What does it actually take to build that kind of power? And more importantly, can any of it be replicated? Let's break down the science. First, you have to look at his resume. Lesnar wasn't just some entertainer. This was a legit standout collegiate wrestler. He went on to conquer the world of entertainment and then basically decided, you know what, I'm gonna go beat up everyone, and became the UFC heavyweight world champion. Just insane. Now, to really understand the method behind this madness, we're turning to the analysis of exercise scientist Dr. Mike Israetel. He's the perfect guy to break down Lesnar's training to see what really works, what might be a little bit of smoke and mirrors, and most importantly, why. Okay, let's start with the first big piece of the puzzle, that raw, explosive, fight-ending strength. This is really where the foundation of the beast is laid. So the goal isn't just about one single burst of power. It's about something called repeat power. And honestly, there's no better example of this than Lesnar's work with battling ropes, an exercise that for most people is kind of useless, but in his hands becomes a truly formidable tool. And this slide says it all. It's all about the intensity. On one hand, you've got what Dr. Israetel literally calls a clown show. You know, a typical kind of low-energy battling ropes workout. But on the other, you see Lesnar's crazy explosive approach. And that intensity is what transforms the entire exercise, building massive endurance and the exact kind of repeat power you need to just slam opponents over and over. And it's not just ropes. I mean, sledgehammer strikes might look simple, but they are unbelievably specific to MMA. They engage your entire interior chain. That's all the muscles on the front of your body, your abs, your quads, and they directly mimic the brutal mechanics of a ground and pound slam. It's functional power personified. So how does all that strength actually translate into a knockout? Well, it's pretty simple physics, really. More muscle in your chest, shoulders, and triceps means more mass. A stronger body pushing that punch means your fist slows down less on impact. And the result? A catastrophic transfer of kinetic energy right to your opponent's jaw. Dr. Israetel just puts it bluntly. If you strip away all the fancy stuff, the path to becoming a better striker is brutally straightforward. Just get a bigger bench press. More pushing strength equals more punching power. Period. It's that simple. But Lesnar takes it another step further. Right after a heavy set on the bench press, he explodes into plyometric push-ups. This technique has a name, post-activation potentiation. And in simple terms, you're basically tricking your nervous system. You activate your muscles with that heavy lift, which supercharges them, letting you produce even more raw, explosive power in the next movement. It's a total game changer. But look, no machine is perfect. Even at the most elite level, science can always find areas for improvement. So let's take a look at how Lesnar's training could be optimized even further. Okay, take this hamstring exercise for example. Dr. Israetel points out that the range of motion is pretty small. Now for a grappler who needs to lift guys from deep, really compromised positions, that's a huge missed opportunity. An exercise like a deficit deadlift would build strength through a massive range of motion, making him way more resilient and way more powerful on the mat. But physical power? That's only half the battle. What about the will to win? Let's dive into the pretty controversial science of training your mental toughness. So Lesnar's own trainer, Marty Morgan, says flat out that some of their most grueling conditioning drills are designed specifically to forge mental toughness. But is that something you can actually build like a muscle? You know, the sports science community is actually really split on this. One camp believes mental toughness is a skill you can train, that you develop through hardship. The other camp believes it's largely an innate genetic trait. You know, you're either born with it or you're not. The real truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Dr. Israetel has a really pragmatic take on this. He argues that if your physical training is so brutally difficult that it pushes your gas tank to its absolute limit, 100% of its limit, well, it already checks the box for mental toughness. The goal isn't to train the mind separately, it's to build a machine so well conditioned that the mind has no choice but to follow. So, after all this analysis, what's the final takeaway? What is the actual blueprint for building a beast like this? Well, it all boils down to a surprisingly simple two-part formula that cleanly separates your foundational work from your specific skill development. First, you build your base. Use simple, heavy, foundational weight training to just get bigger and stronger. No need to overcomplicate it. Then, you apply it. Let your actual sports-specific training, rolling on the mats, hitting bags, sparring with partners, be what forges your real skill. Think of it this way. The weight room builds the engine, the practice room teaches you how to drive. Which leaves us with one final thought. Brock Lesnar is clearly the product of intense, intelligent training. But when you look at the raw genetic material he started with, you just have to ask yourself, is the ultimate weapon truly forged in the gym, or is it simply born that way?